Terry, welcome to the Entrepreneur Next Door. You're probably one of the busiest women on Long Island. Uh, Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Let's start by with a relatively quick introduction. Who's Terry?
Sure. I'm Terry Elise Maselli, President and CEO of HIALI. I don't know, Zev, if I'm the busiest, because I've met a lot of busy people in my life, but we're one of the recognized voices for Long Island business and a powerful force in regional and economic development. So, yes, we are out and about a lot, just helping the Long Island business community.
Okay, perfect. So, um, my audience is international, and what I'd like to do is to kind of bring him up to date as to where we are. So we are both in New York, in a place called Long Island, and I have lots of notes. So I'm going to be looking to the side once in a while. So and you'll correct me if I'm wrong because I got some statistics for people to understand. So
Yep.
Long Island is sort of like a stretch from connecting between Queens and New York. There's a stretch off to the right.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually 120 miles long
Mm-hmm.
and 23 miles wide. There are roughly 2.8 to 3 million people
Mm-hmm.
living on this island. 120 public school districts with 650 individual schools, and the most important piece, which is why you're here, 100,000 businesses. 90% of them are small businesses, which means less than 50 people employed by those companies.
Yeah.
Uh, doesn't quite meet the small business category in terms of the government, but there are lots of small businesses and lots of less than 50 business companies with employees. So that's where we are. We'll get to talk about why I really, really wanted to talk to you, but let's do a quick thing that I do with all my guests. Um, Going back to history, if I ran into Terry when she was 16 years old and asked her what she wanted to be when she grew up, what would you tell me?
Heavens, I had no clue, Zev. I have to tell you, at 16. In fact, a quick story about that. I was working part time in a liquid level equipment type company, and I remember my dad saying to me, "You look miserable," because I was. He said, if I can give you one piece of advice, it would be try to find something and do what you love. And I eventually, as I got older, realized I absolutely love the idea of understanding business, how it's created, how it's sustained, how it grows. So that led me really to my path. But at 16, I, I really did not know what I wanted to do.
Okay, fair enough. So you go to college, I think in Hofstra, if I remember, and
Adelphi, Adelphi.
Adelphi, sorry, and then
Okay.
you major in business.
Yes.
What was your first job after college?
It was another equipment company in the Hauppauge Industrial Park. And at that point, again, I was still living home, and my dad, to his credit, who was one of my mentors, kept saying, you really have to. It's hard to answer the question, what do you really want to do? It's easier to answer the question, what do you enjoy doing? Right? Because that can
Okay.
lead you to a career. So that really helped me out tremendously. He put me through Dale Carnegie training, which was the thing that catapulted my career because I eventually went and worked with them. And that was a thing that really helped me define who I was, truthfully, and where I felt I could help Long Island.
So I was going to ask you, and you brought up your dad. Were your parents entrepreneurs or they worked for a living?
My mother was a stay at home mom, although I will preface that and say that when my father was going through college, my mother worked and put him through college. So she was entrepreneurial in her own spirit, really. And my dad was a SVP in a company actually here in the park, but they were extremely entrepreneurial. And my nucleus family was very entrepreneurial. They all owned businesses. So when we were growing up as kids, we would very often over the dining room table talk about business and talk about
Mhm.
how do you grow that, or what does that look like, or how do you get employees. So I was involved in those types of discussions at a very, what I can remember to be a very early age. which I think helped out a lot.
Oh, so the company that before you went to work for Dale Carnegie, the company that you started with, it was a sales position though, right?
It was a sales slash customer service position. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
And you know
which
what? It wasn't the sales and customer service I disliked. It was in fact, I went on with Dale Carnegie to build a sales organization for them and loved what I did. But it was at that point really the product. You know, you can't sell a product you don't believe in, right? That's obvious. Or I don't know if it's obvious or not, but you can't
yeah.
sell a product you don't believe in.
Well, you shouldn't.
You
Let's say it
shouldn't.
this way. Yeah,
Right, right,
yeah.
right. So it wasn't that I didn't like customer service or I didn't like sales. It was I needed to be, I think, in a different culture, corporate culture, I mean, and just a different type of company. And my father, as I said, put me through Dale Carnegie training at that point, and it led me to work for them for 18
Mhm.
years, actually.
So, I'm a member of a international mentoring platform called Growth Mentor,
Hmm.
and there's I think probably about 500 of us in different disciplines. Everybody's a specialist in different areas, but we give freely of our time as mentors. The platform is a subscription base for people all around the world, entrepreneurs, startup founders, growth marketers, literally. So, when I was working with them, I would get up in the morning and I would talk to people from South Africa to
Hmm.
New Zealand to Switzerland. And the reason I bring this up is because at least the young generation,
Hmm.
the one that followed, I want to talk about me because I'm white hair, right?
Yeah.
White beard. So those youngsters that I'm mentoring, I don't think they know who Dale Carnegie is.
They don't.
If you told me Dale Carnegie throughout my career, I would have said wow, because I thought it was a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant company, and the value that they offered people was in a skill set that would really catapult anybody into success. Not cheesy, here's the tips to be successful. I mean, so you mentioned Dale Carnegie, and I think I want to give him and the company credit by you describing
Sure.
what it is that they tell what they do, because you spent a big chunk of your career working for them. So who are they? Who are they? What do they do?
Yeah. So, the best way I think to describe that, Zev, is to tell a story about how I got there. So, my father said to me, whatever you decide to do in your life, and he was also a Dale Carnegie graduate, by the way, believed very strongly in their principles. He said, you need to have self confidence to do it. And you need to really understand how to treat other people. And that's the real philosophy of Dale Carnegie training, right? Is how to win friends and influence people and how to stop worrying and start living and how to focus. He put me in a program very early on, and I had a very large fear back then of public speaking, so much so that I remember the first one or two sessions that I went through, they had a table that you had to stand in front of. And I just remember gripping onto that table thinking, please don't let me faint. Please don't let me faint. And I didn't, obviously. But their philosophy is all about treat people the way you want to be treated. There's some really strong leadership philosophy of, we have two ears and one mouth for a reason, right? We should ask a lot of questions before we speak. Again, how to treat people, how to focus when you're getting anxious or you're stressed out about something. And then the organization grew into doing sales training as well as some executive coaching. So it grew over the years. You made a comment before about, which is correct, that the average young adult today, I just did something up at Smithtown School and I mentioned Dale Carnegie. Not one of them knew what the
Yeah.
program was about. But right before I left to come to the HIALI, they were on a campaign to even take Dale Carnegie's pictures and put up pictures of him that were much more current and much more. So the new CEO just wrote a book. So they're very aware that they have to really do some things to get the new generation involved. It's wonderful training. I would recommend it to anyone, really.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I would say for most of the younger people that are going into business, it's really the internet generation and beyond. Um, they probably think, why do I need that if I could become a millionaire sitting in the basement with an iPad, create an app, or start a business online? I don't need the skill set to the Dale Carnegie is teaching,
Yeah.
not just sales,
Yeah,
but
no, I
leadership,
understand.
it's
Yep.
right.
You
But
know, I think the answer to that, if someone were to say that to me, the answer is what they do need, whether you are on a iPad or you're on a phone or you're behind a computer, is if you are dealing with other people and wanting as an entrepreneur to grow a company, you have to gain what's called willing cooperation. So that doesn't mean you might
yeah,
be face to face with a lot of people, but whether you're on Zoom or whatever you're doing, you have to gain cooperation. Whether you need investors or hiring, whatever you need to do. So it's a skill that's needed all over, really.
yeah, and I think the miss for them is that because a lot of them are techies for obvious reason. And when I coach those founders and even small business owners in the tech, and I said, look, stop falling in love with your tech. Your
Right.
tech is, I know it's great, but it's meaningless. It's not the tech that matters. What matters is your ability to connect with subscribers for them to feel that you truly care about solving a problem for them. And that comes from not just writing marketing copy using ChatGPT or
Right.
Claude or Gemini, but it comes from coming across genuinely to people that subscribe to you or do
Right.
business with you. Uh, it's not, I mean, Del Carnegie said, how to influence people. It's not in a negative way necessarily. It's how to get them to see things that maybe they're not able to see from their own subjective viewpoint. So you worked for Dale Carnegie, and how did you come across the HIA? And I want to explain to people what the HIA is. So HIA stands for Hauppauge Industrial Association, right? And
Yep.
Hauppauge is a city on Long Island. And so an industrial association would be a group of people that represents businesses within the periphery of that city primarily, right? Probably that's how it started, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Right.
That's how it started. Yep.
Yeah. How does Terry stumble into the front door of HIA?
Yeah. So when I was working at Dale Carnegie Training, I started as what was called the corporate solutions salesperson, actually, which was going into CEOs and talking to them about how did they be training into their organization so that they could change potentially a corporate culture or train their managers or train whatever they needed, train their salespeople. And I began to look for organizations that I believe had an affinity to that, where I could meet CEOs and I could meet Long Island business. And I stumbled upon what was then called the HIA. We're now called the HIA-LI because our breadth is much larger than Hauppauge. It's all of Long Island now. And they were just really user friendly for me. So I began as a member of the HIA-LI. So I got to know a lot about what they did. I used to do presentations for them. I would get involved in their committee meetings and things like that. And then eventually they asked me to be on the board of directors. So I got a much more inside view of what the
Mhm.
organization was about. So it was wonderful because that was for many years. So when I took this position as president and CEO, it's never easy to lead anything or to own a business or to lead a business, but it was certainly easier because I had been affiliated with them for so many years.
Right. So again, for our audience, it's a city. I don't know how big Hauppauge is, but it's a decent city. There's businesses affiliated within the town, and then there's a group that represents them. Um, how are you different than a chamber of commerce, for example?
Yeah, we're very different actually. So the HIALI is one of the recognized voices for Long Island business and a real powerful force in regional and economic development. And that's a broad way to say we get very involved in not only some things that chambers do. So we introduce new members to members, we do ribbon cuttings, we do a lot of that, but we also introduce them to the region. So we're introducing them to opportunities for grants, for tax incentives. The governor is coming and visiting a lot of the businesses here. So it's a much broader breadth. So
Mhm.
Hauppauge is a town, actually, and the Long Island Innovation Park at Hauppauge, which is the park that we represent, is the largest in the Northeast, only second behind Silicon Valley. So it's a major economic engine. So because of that, money's come to us. We do studies about the park. So it's almost like I'm laughing, a bit like a chamber of commerce on steroids. I don't know how else to say that, but
Yeah.
because we do so much more. And chambers are great. We partner with a lot of chambers, but we really, really meet with business owners and talk about how they can grow their businesses and really make that connection to state and the region as well.
Right. So, and that's really why I wanted you on my show, because it's about small business and entrepreneurship. I think, and I'm not going to be one of these podcasters that spends 20 minutes complimenting their guests and telling them how great they are. I will say that when I think about Long Island business and the sheer size of, 100,000 businesses, 90% of them are small business owners. I couldn't think of anybody who would be a better authority on living, breathing that universe than you, because of your exposure. And I think the challenge that you face, and I was a member when I first started in 2012, is that we pay to be a member, and then we expect the chamber or the association to do all this stuff for us, right? Which is probably the general membership crowd that you deal with. So you've come across, one of my really best friends who sadly passed away from pancreatic cancer when we were members of BNI in the city, and we used to do our elevator pitch. His tagline was, "My name is Rob Cohen, and I've seen it all."
Yeah.
Right? And I kind of think that it's sort of like could be your tagline when it comes to small business ownership and the personalities and the expectations. Terry, you've seen it all. So let's dive into this. Because again, we're on an island, and it's really saturated by
Right.
people, with businesses. Everybody's literally on top of each other. Intense competition, right? It's really difficult to differentiate yourself when you're in this overcrowded situation, right? Um, so what's your advice to a small business owner, in terms of succeeding in such a doggy dog street fight universe?
Yeah.
Because if they like the famous, so if you could do it in New York, you could do it anywhere.
Right.
If you could survive on Long Island and have a successful business. And by the way, my definition of successful business is not one that survives.
Hmm.
It's a business that is profitable, that the owners build equity, they're able to save, they're able
Hmm.
to grow, they're able to be part of their community. That's a successful, not one that just say how things are going. Well, we're still around after
Yeah.
50 years.
Right.
That's so
Right.
go. So what's your advice from everything you've seen? What's the good, the bad, the ugly about entrepreneurship?
Sure. So, yeah, it's so funny. I ran a breakfast with the president this morning with a bunch of CEOs, and they happen to have been small business owners. So we're actually talking about this exact topic. And the one piece of advice I gave several of them was, particularly when you're a small business, which, as you said, a large percentage of Long Island it's a very entrepreneurial spirit. You need to continue to seek out mentors in business. A lot of times when someone starts a company and he or she will say to me, "What do I do about this?" I'll say, seek out people who have either done it before and or who are in that space right now, which is they get a little taken back by that, because really what I'm saying is reach out to your competition. Reach out to your competition, or at least view what they're doing so you understand what they're doing and what their path was. That's the first thing. The second piece of advice I give entrepreneurs, as well as people in general, is somebody once said to me, someone else's opinion of you is none of your business. So, meaning you're going to have a lot of people when you start a business or whatever you're doing in life. Hopefully you'll build your tribe, people that believe in you, but you're also going to have people who will be able to want to knock you down. Don't listen to those people. Their opinion, that bad opinion is none of your business. Just move on. And that's really important for a small business owner, because there's a lot of obstacles. Running a business, you know this, you mentor people, is not for the faint of heart. It is absolutely not for the faint of heart. So our ability to be able to keep our stamina up and have the courage to take, a step and another step and another step comes from the belief in ourselves and what we're doing. So again, first piece of advice is seek out mentors. Second piece of advice is just continue doing what you believe you do well, and do not listen to the naysayers. Do not do it.
Right. And the thing that they have to understand, and again, you probably deal with this every day when people walk into your office or work with your staff and they come in complaining that this didn't work, and said, take a deep breath and understand that being a business owner is a leadership position. Now, you can be
Right.
an owner of one, like me
Right.
as a business coach, but it's still a leadership position. And for me, the number one trait of great leaders is humility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the humility piece is, despite your title, whether you're CEO, your president CEO, and chairman of the board, whatever crap you want to, indoctrinate yourself, at the end of the day, you're not the smartest guy in the room. Like one of my friends says, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
Right.
So you have to have the humility to recognize that, yes, you started a company, you deserve the credit, you took the risk, and maybe you have employees, but you don't know everything. So be humble and seek advice, seek mentors, and don't be cheap, right? That's the other thing that's very common on Long Island. Like, somebody would come to me, and I don't want to talk about myself, but business coaching is a form of mentoring, but it's different.
Yep. Yep.
And the first question would be, how much do you charge? I know, by the way, when somebody asks me that question as the first opening question, they're done. I will never work with somebody that asks me that.
Right.
But how much do you charge? And how soon before I pay you all this money do I see big results? Right? And so I look at them and
Yeah.
I say, listen, I don't think I'm for you. And just as a piece of advice, I wouldn't take your money because we're not a good fit if that's your approach to this.
Right.
So I'm not a magician, and you need to be humble that we can both look at your business with objective eyes and identify what needs to be improved, what works well, what doesn't. It's not about, I'm going to give you money and then you're going to turn the world upside down for me and I'm going to be rich. It doesn't work that way, right? So humility is a big thing.
Absolutely. And I agree with you, Zeb. It's so, when we went through COVID, I think in particular, the organizations that were able to survive are the ones that were extremely open-minded, extremely collaborative, really understood they needed to do things different, better, or more effective, or they really will lose out to other people who are doing that, right? And understood the philosophy of what you just said, which is we need to surround ourselves with people that are better than us. We shouldn't be the smartest person in the room, as you said, and we don't need to be the expert in everything, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's how you build great companies. One of my favorite books, business books, is, I don't know if you've ever read it, Good to Great by James Collins. If you
Oh yeah,
you really should. It's great.
yeah. No, I did.
Yeah, but he chronicles, I don't remember, it's probably 30 companies and how they became okay and they became great companies. And there's such consistency in the approach. It almost, I think what happens sometimes is business owners think, I don't know, could it be that simple? So they think they can't do it. And really, it's just following some really basic, again, hire people that are smarter than you, treat people right, do the
Hmm.
right thing. Customer service is key. You know, all those things that we talk about year after year after year, that's what great companies are built on, right?
And you said the same thing that I always say. It's not that complicated. I don't care how many YouTubes you're gonna watch. I don't know how many times
Right.
you're gonna watch Gary V on a podcast and oh why I wish I could. No, it's actually really, really simple. It goes back to basics. And my dad, God bless him, had a small grocery store in Israel. I watched him do this and he didn't have a high school education,
Right.
but there was an intuitive survival mechanism plus the ability to recognize. Because just imagine, I live in Israel, and literally every corner of a few blocks had a grocery store. The competition would literally, somebody would come out of their apartment building, and
And
if they
go
made a
downstairs.
left,
Right.
if they made a left, they would come to our store. If they made a right, they went to somebody else's store. If they went straight, they'll see another grocery store. And he had this intuitive sense that he had to hold on to his customers. And the only way that he could do this is by being attuned to what every one of those personalities in apartment buildings that came to him every day wanted, and to have what they needed, to serve them with a smile. They weren't even paying for their stuff. My father used to have this book of what they owe him, and on a Friday they'll come in and say, "What do I owe you?" Right? Think about this. It's kind of like insane, but and the story that I always tell is this lady that was married to a doctor came in one day and asked him for a piece of deli meat he didn't carry. It was actually ham, and
Right.
not many people in Tel Aviv ate ham. And he said, I don't carry it because nobody asked for it. And she berated him. How dare you? You know, I'm a wife of a doctor, and I come here every morning. And I remember this because I think I was maybe 11.
Mm-hmm.
My father, she left and my father cried. He
Mm.
cried. And then he went on, got his bicycle, drove across town in blistering heat. August heat in Israel it was like 100 degrees. Went to the place where he could buy the meat, got the meat, came home, sliced it, put it in a bag, and he said, "Come with me." And then we walked up 4 stairs, 4 flights of stairs,
Right.
knocked on her door, and said, "I'm sorry, I didn't have the stuff for you. Here it is."
Wow.
And she offered to pay him, and he said, "No, I failed you. Please accept my apologies." So we walked away, and I looked at my dad and I said, "Are you crazy? I mean, you drove across town and you didn't get paid." And he said what I just said to you. Look on the other side of the block.
That's
Okay,
right.
I can't. So I'm sorry about my own stories, but
Oh, that's a great story. That's a great
this
story.
this
How to take a lemon and make lemonades, right? Right? Just a great story about
not it's
customer
like we
service and really understanding what's
yeah,
important.
not complicated.
Right.
Product or service, your customers are the only thing that's going to give you
Right.
revenue and put money in your pocket. And you have to do everything you can, especially because we're mostly an online community, even with an online uh, merchandise and interactions. You have to provide them the kind of experience that it's easy to do business with you, that they know you generally care about them. And the part that everybody fails, and you know this better than me, when you fail and you disappoint the customer, you got to go out of your way to make sure that you acknowledge it, you apologize, you fix it. And
Right.
most people will not do it. They'll hide behind their voicemail, they'll hide behind, you
Right.
can't even get to customer service these days. So that doesn't apply to maybe the small businesses that you deal with uh, on a
Yeah, I
day-to-day
mean,
basis.
I have to say that where we're blessed that our members and the people we come in contact with, 99.9% of them really do get it, really do understand that. I remember we did a survey not too long ago looking at the difference between when someone um, is treated poorly in customer service versus when they have a wow experience. And what it equated to, Zev, is that when someone has a wow experience, they tell an average of 8 to 10 people about that wow
Mhm.
experience. Wow, this was great. Da, da, da. When they have a horrible experience, they'll tell close to 25 to 30 people, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just so ingrained in them that they were unjust, right? And this was a situation. So we need to understand how important this is. We really need to understand how important this is. Again, I think we're blessed with our membership that many business owners do understand, and that's how they, you talk about not just surviving, they're thriving
Yeah.
because they just spend a lot of time with the customer, a lot of time with the customer.
And we always used to say when I was growing up, customer is king.
Right.
And today give it 50x customer is king because they have the opportunity to post their reviews and share with people on multiple platforms their experience with your business. And Nextdoor, which is a local community-based platform for people that live in areas, to me, I spent a lot of time on it recently because I had some questions, I needed help, so I posted in my area, Woodbury, Syosset,
Yep.
Plainview. I'm looking for a physical therapist that's not going to make me sit in a corner and do this 50 times and then come to me. How I want somebody different, dedicated. And I had 25 different responses from people that live in our community of who they care about. Equally compliments and equally don't go there because the place is horrible. So the exposure is massive compared to years ago where they could just, word of mouth could tell people, don't go to that restaurant. I had a horrible experience.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So you can influence maybe 5, 10 people. But today, you post on a platform that has thousands of people that live in the community. It's pretty risky,
Right.
right? It's very risky. So hopefully somebody's paying attention to it. Um, so we talked about kind of your advice to businesses. Pay attention to your customer service, right? Um, You started your career in sales, which is the cornerstone of, to me, it's like it's the one thing no entrepreneur likes to do or wants to do, but it's the lifeblood of any business, right? It's the red blood cells that bring oxygen to your body. If you don't do sales, well, how are you going to make money? How are you going to do revenue? And that's the one thing that nobody wants to do it. They think that sales, especially nowadays, is spammy email that you're going to send to people 3, 4 times a day with coupons, or
Right. Right.
if you grab their phone, it's text messages. You are a sales expert, and kind of like a side note, because I got lots of stories. I remember the first time I came to your office, I ran into the Sandler guys who
Right.
were right next
Right.
door to you. And I looked at them and said, holy crap, I took Sandler years ago
Right.
and I didn't even know they were still around. And
Yeah.
and I forgot their name, but those two guys were phenomenal. They're just amazing.
Yeah.
So you're a sales expert. What do you tell people who start a business and they don't really recognize they're not going to sell themselves, right? You have to do sales. So what do you tell them?
Yeah. I tell them two things. One of the reasons why I enjoyed and I still enjoy um, a sales role, and let me back up a few steps and tell you that when I took over here 20 years ago, I'll be here 20 years in at the end in December, we really changed the dynamic internally of the HILI to much more of a customer service sales driven organization because we understood that in order to help business owners out, you really needed to consultatively sell, right? So I tell people when they sell two things. a large piece of selling is about how you treat people. A large piece of anything is about how you treat people, right?
Hmm.
So when I sold at Dale Carnegie, and I was at one point, going to conventions every year and winning awards. And I don't say that to tout myself. What I did really well, really, really well, is I knew all of my customers' birthdays. I knew all of their kids' birthdays. I was at many of their weddings. I just excelled in the customer service spot because I treated them, because I cared about them so much, and I treated them like that, number one. And number two, I would often say to people, you know what, this might not be the right thing for you. Just like you said to me about, your business. We need to have the courage in sales to be able to say, this is probably not a right fit based on what you're telling me. And that's okay. That's okay. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean, by the way, that person can still refer somebody to you, right? It just means it's not a right fit for them. So we have to not treat sales as this send out 5 spam emails and we need to get a yes, we need to get. That's not what it's about. It's about allowing people to buy based on the questions you ask, if there's a connection, and then and only then do you really develop a really good professional relationship. I know that sounds odd, but it has served me and us so well because, again, it's all about developing the relationship, right?
Yep.
So, and when I bring salespeople in here, I'll be honest with you, I can tell whether they'll work out or not because it's all about the mentality. It's all about that
Yeah.
mentality, right?
Yeah.
So, and business owners need to understand how important business development is, right?
Right. So yeah, so we went from calling it sales to calling it business development because the stigma of salespeople or just hearing the word sales is not one, even to this day, that brings anything positive to people's
Right,
mind, like an
right,
experience. Like
right,
for me, my pet peeve uh, are car dealerships, right? I mean,
right,
they still haven't learned anything. It's a
right,
21st century. You walk into most of them and they still sell you the same stupid way,
right,
and they just don't get it.
right,
So when I was so in my corporate career of 30 years, I was developing indirect, direct sales rep, overseas sales offices, and then when I did some workshops on sales, I used to say to people, "What do you think is the number one rule of sales?" Right? And of course, most people would say what you said before, you got two ears, one mouth. You should really listen. Don't open your mouth. And I said, nah, 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 nah. Forget it. That you get that from Dale Carnegie, but this is not my thing. Let me tell you what the number of real sales. Don't sell.
right,
And a face drop. And they said, but we're salespeople. I said, don't
right,
sell.
right,
The sale piece is a transaction, right?
right,
The important piece is I wrote a blog years ago that says sales is dead. We're all marketeers now. And I 100% believe in it. That the sales piece is a transaction. If you did your marketing correctly, identified the need of the customer, identified there's a good fit between what your solution and what they need, and everything else falls into place. The transaction piece is a natural next step, right? You can ask for the order, which is what they teach all salespeople, or it might it might end as it ended many times for me, and I was in the medical industry, so a little bit more complicated but easier. So what's the next step? How can we work together, right?
right,
And when you did something right, that's the bonus, right? When
right,
somebody says, not,
right,
well, do you want to buy from me? Like, what would it take for you to buy?
right,
So business owners have to understand you have to do sales,
right.
but you shouldn't do it because you need to sell something, right? It's so obvious today,
Yeah. And
It's
you know
so
what I meet a lot of CEOs, and what I'll say to them is, listen, if you don't get that concept of what we just spoke about, then you better be sure that you bring people on that can do that for you, right? So it's
yep.
just like, I'm always surprised when I meet some CEOs who, quite frankly, have a major fear of public speaking, right? That's a common fear. It's above
Hmm.
disease and above death. It's just a common fear for
Yeah.
people. And I'll say to them, if you understand how important it is to go out and market your company and maybe talk to groups and do that. If you are not going to do it yourself, or if you are not going to network yourself, you better make sure that you have people surrounding you that are doing that.
Yeah, and the thing that they miss, by the way, as owners, and I've seen it so many times,
Right,
the best, I'm going to call him salesperson, the best salesperson any company can have is the owner, it's the founder,
right,
because they took the risk, they're passionate, they can talk about their technology, or they can talk about their service, they can talk about their why better than anyone else.
right.
And when the owner speaks to you, and I'm talking about people who are genuine, right? If you can connect with the owner of a company, of course you'll do business with them,
Right,
right? And his responsibility is to hire people that do the same exact thing
right,
and care about customers, about, right?
right.
So you're right. The fear of public speaking, yeah, just go ahead and do it.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah,
Just go
yeah.
out and do it. I remember one of my students because I was a graduate school marketing professor in Tour University. And one of my students, everything we did was case studies, and every student had to do a case study with the PowerPoint in front of the class. So about 30, 35 students. And I remember one year, one of them came to me and said, I'm not doing this. And they said, doing what? I'm not standing in front of the class. I can't speak publicly. And I said, well, we'll help you, but you're doing it. No, no, I'm not doing it. And he walked away. And the next class he came in, he said, I spoke to my dad. He said, I don't have to do it.
Oh,
And I said, and I said, okay, so go back to your dad and tell him you failed the course. I said, it's not an option. You're doing it.
good
Okay.
for
And
you.
we'll
Good for
we'll
you that
meet.
you said that to him.
We're gonna meet before the class, and you can do a dry run, or I'll give you some pointers. And then before you speak, these are your students. Everybody is afraid, deathly afraid of doing it.
Yeah,
It's fine. And you know what's funny, Terry? At the end, for their final project, they had to go out and do market surveys. And this kid went around Wall Street and interviewed people on the street and filmed it and came back. And he went later on and went to graduate. He was an HR professional, and he's an HR manager now. And
wow.
it's just so, yeah, get over it. But for business owners, there's no one better to talk about the
Yeah, than
business
yourself.
than the
I
owner,
agree.
right?
I agree.
When you
Absolutely.
talk about HIALI in
Yeah,
front of a group of people,
yeah.
uh, you can't hire a salesperson to do a better job
Right,
than you. You just
right,
can't. Not going to happen.
right.
So, all right. So this is 21st century. We've got AI taking over everything. More and more technology that removes the human touch from our ability to do things. Where do you see us in the next? I'm not doing 10 years. 10 years for me is eternity, right? When we grew up, it was
Yeah,
what's your 10-year plan? For me, when I talk to people like my clients, well, let's do a 2 to 3 year plan, because we don't
yeah,
know if we're still going to be around. So
yeah.
what's your, I'm not into what your forecast, but what's your feeling about where we're heading in terms of business
I
impact?
mean, it's so interesting. We just ran an AI conference and I was amazed because, when you think of AI, or at least most people think of AI, they think of this because they don't know a lot about it necessarily, this very complicated animal. Yet, when you look at it, when you look at Siri, if you have Siri at home and you ask her a question and she gives you weather and she plays whatever she plays, or smart watches. I mean, those are all run by AI. So what we're finding within the next 2 to 3 years in particular, that this is going to be a major focus, that people need to, on some level, embrace it, and understand that it really, from an intellectual standpoint, can make a process, give you a lot more statistics up front, do it much more efficiently. You're still going to need a team to be able to do that, right? Because,
Mhm.
a computer has no emotion to it, obviously. But it really, if you embrace it, can become a very valuable tool. Look at marketing. You log in and you look for something to buy, and then all of a sudden you get all the ads on that same thing. I mean, it's just really amazing. And before we ran the conference, I kind of looked at it as well and said to myself, gee, I don't know how this is going to work. But I have to tell you, I really did a complete turnaround And I really feel the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see major processes, the healthcare industry, many of the robotics they're building right now have AI involved, and they're curing cancer and they're doing some amazing things. I think our future, our young professionals are attuned to it because they do embrace technology differently than we did years ago. There's much more of it, right? So I think that's the good news. I think if there's any bad news, it's we really have to be diligent. And again, I go back to in not losing this personal contact. I think it's really important that the next generation understands how critical that is.
Yeah, and look, I'm a marketing guy by training, by philosophy, by life, and to me, the impact that AI has on marketing, sort of like a mixed blessing. Really, that there are a lot of people going to lose their jobs because the you know the business owner that hired a copywriter to work on their website and to do their email is going to say, "What do I need that? I can go to ChatGPT and it's going to do it for me." And unfortunately, it's compromising on at best average copy, but ChatGPT or any AI, no matter what AI engine you use, is not going to be able to tailor the kind of language
Right,
in your marketing communications that truly represent who you are. If
right,
you want to be cheesy, you can. I mean, think about what is AI? They take the collection of words on the web and then they spit stuff at you, and I use it, but I don't use it as copy and paste. I use it to see if there's a better way to rephrase it, or did I miss a point. There's some great AI features. You mentioned medicine, the ability to process massive amount of data and immediately spit out some logical uh, recommendations or hypotheses. That's pretty powerful.
right.
That's available now even on our stuff in marketing. You can go and plug in a YouTube podcast, mine are about an hour. You could plug the URL into an AI engine and it'll spit out the main points of what we talked about, right?
Yeah.
So
You
is
know,
that
I
I
think the difference will be, because you mentioned about loss of jobs, I think the difference will be the talent pool will be much different. It's going to really have to revolutionize academia, right? Because
yeah.
they're gonna have to look at this and say, okay, what jobs now do we need to fill that are different than they were before? So, you know, and it truly has to be a collaboration between the businesses and again academia. We talk about that disconnect sometimes, and government policies. There will have to be a whole new set of policies that come down the pike with AI. And what does fabrication look like, and what's illegal and what's not. And so it's going to be very interesting to watch. But I do think it will create a very different talent pool.
Yeah, and there's already a prospering, amazing industry that created around AI that which is really the way you give the AI instruction is a skill that really directly correlates to the kind of results that you get. And there's thousands of people now that say, look, I've got the technology of how the type of phraseology you use in AI engine don't give you the best results. So that's okay. So what would be if I had to push you for just one piece of advice for people who are in the small business universe in terms of what's coming down the pike, in terms of surviving and thriving and dealing with the challenges that we all face, what advice would you give them based on the thousands of people that you've come across as part of the association?
Probably, and it's probably the best piece of advice someone once gave me as well, that I give to other people, which is every single day is a learning day. Meaning, when you're building a business or you're in any career for that matter, keep your minds open to things that can happen. Keep your mind open to what strategies might be new. Keep your minds open to new people you hire. Just keep your minds open to learning different things. I know that almost sounds a little odd when it comes to owning a business, but it's so important. It's so, so important. I
Mm.
think sometimes what happens with people who have been in business for a bit is they it goes back to what we said before, Zeb. They kind of feel like, well, they know it all, or they've done this before, or I'm at a place where I'm content. All those things come out of their mouth, and that's not the way you go from good to great. It's just not.
Yeah.
So that's
And
my big piece of advice, and I practice it. Is I can't tell you. I mean, every day I learn something, if not several
yeah,
things, but every single day I learn something.
there was there's a UK advertising agency, one of the most successful in the world, and when you walk into their office, you see a mannequin dressed up with a two-piece suit. Instead of a head, it's a blender, and it holds a briefcase, and the briefcase says "Walk in stupid every day." And that's sort of like the culture
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
owner, and it's not surprised they're successful. Said exactly what you said. If you
yeah,
walk, so what does walking stupid every day means? Means you don't know it all. You means there's something you could have learned. You failed yesterday, learn from it. What else can we do tomorrow to
right.
improve? One of the business owners I worked for, and I was lucky to work for him because he was brilliant. We had a Tuesday morning meeting every week, and he always started with, "What can we do to be better and
Yeah,
different?" And this sort of like ingrained into you. When this becomes a mindset,
yeah,
you really can't go wrong. You combine that with humility. So you said one other thing that I meant to ask you, and I want to come back to it. We both talked about the importance of hiring people around you who are ideally smarter than you are, that are professionals, etc. Hiring is a really, really, really big problem. I think nationwide, but especially here.
right.
And I remember working with my clients, getting the talent pool is really small. The fact that the economy is so big and thriving gives you even smaller talent pool. How do your members deal with, it's really tough to find good people. Let me just put it straight out. It's tough to find good people. And so you have two choices. You either go to the bigger pool and allow somebody to work remotely, but then you have to have the mindset that you're okay with it. Or what do they do? It's
Yeah.
a really big issue.
So the ones who do it really well have some sort of process that they've developed. So, for example, they're active at reaching out to high schools and doing shadowing days. So they're getting kids at a younger age, and they're bringing kids in so they can watch what happens and get them interested in what they're doing. They're very active with internships. Very
Mhm.
active with internships. So they look at hiring much different than the average person might, in terms of going on Indeed or going on LinkedIn and going to some of those pools. We used to go to Newsday. Remember years ago they used to have the ads in Newsday. Showing my
I
age,
love this.
but their mindset is much different. The ones who do it well, it's a much more of a holistic look, and much larger, and even the small companies in terms of let me introduce this to people that I feel I can mold and I can train. Years ago, people used to say, well, I'm going to hire for the technical skill. And now we're seeing people hiring for an attitude and a culture, somebody who fits into a culture. The rest of the training can happen. You can do that training on site. You can send them something somewhere else and do the training. So it's a complete reverse of what at least I saw many years ago. But the ones
Yeah.
who really do it well are looking at all avenues to find good talent.
Yeah. And if you want to be part of the industrial era and just hire people that are, just tell them what to do, and they're just going to sit on an assembly line and just follow your orders, it's not going to work. You can
Right.
find them, but it's not going to work.
Yeah.
That's
And
not the
your
team.
your your company will probably reach a threshold if you do that, right? It reaches a point
Yeah.
and that's
And
it.
they're not going to stick around because they're going to go home and say, "What am I doing? So I'm
Right.
getting $20 an hour to sit there and be bored."
Right.
No, you're right. So I'll take it a step further because there's a trend. I'm not saying it scientifically because I can't back it up, but I see more and more discussions from people who are thought leaders that are saying, skip college. It's a waste of money. Stop. Everybody thinks going to college. No, skip it. It's 50,000 a year to go to school, or maybe 20 plus to go to state school. Save your money. Go and get a job
Right.
and learn a skill. And you know what? Honestly, I really think that's smart advice, because the 4 years you're going to work for someone,
Right.
for the right company who is going to nurture you and train you and motivate you. That kid who at 18 went to work for somebody, when they're 22, have 4 years experience, learn how to work, learn how to deal with other people, learn conflict resolution, learn communications, learn all the skills they need to do. They're probably going to be a middle manager at that point, where their friends who went to college just to get drunk, have sex, and do whatever are coming out praying that someone's going to hire them with a college degree, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
So,
and
I mean, we see that trend as well. I mean, we particularly see it in this innovation park. We have a lot of manufacturing firms and biopharma firms
mhm,
and medical firms and things like that. And the major misnomer is that someone who is working on a machine can't make a lot of money, which is far from the truth. Far from the truth. They come right out of school. They can sometimes make six figures, quite frankly. So that's number one. Number two is, we won't get political, but there is a lot going on right now with the colleges, right? And even the protests and things going on.
mhm.
As a parent, parents look at that and I think they say, wow, I don't know I want to send my kid into that environment. So it's very difficult. And I have to say, I don't know how you felt about it, but I remember, so I went to Adelphi, as I said. I don't think I learned a lot, but it helped me mature. So that
Yeah,
was a very expensive way to mature, quite frankly. That was 4 years and then 5 years with a master's to mature. So people are just looking at it very different, right?
yeah, and look, so we don't have to get into what happened on university campuses, but to me, because what I represent in my previous country, were the topic of all these demonstrations. But to me, what it showed, because there's a lot of stuff that came out with the hatred towards Israel
Yep.
and the pro-Palestinian movement, a lot came out about what's really behind all these Ivy Leagues and all these fancy universities, which is really complete failure. So you're
Right.
getting people to come to your school, pay $100,000 a year, whatever they pay, right? But you're not teaching them anything,
Right.
right? You haven't, and so this to me was the probably the biggest missed opportunity in
Right.
academic education, to take a legitimate protest. And believe me, as an Israeli, there's a lot of what they said that I agree with. Not the hatred, but the fact that the price the Palestinian paid for this was over the top and unjustified.
Right.
I say it with a hand on my heart. But you're an academic institution, and your job is to be a thought leader, to teach people how to think critically, how to evaluate things, how to be unbiased. This was an opportunity to get all these kids from stupid tents into auditoriums and educate them. Because you
Yep.
know what, Terry? 98% of them are idiots who don't
Right.
know what Palestine is, what Israel's going. They don't know anything about the region. They
Right.
just saw pictures of dead babies
Right.
and they reacted to it rightfully,
Right.
but they didn't react to October 7th. I didn't see demonstration after October 7th.
Right.
Didn't see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of
So,
I agree. A lot of misinformation. It was a missed opportunity. I agree. I
but
agree.
it's just it's ignorance. Like I went to
Right.
school in the late 70s and Purchase, which is a small school that I picked. And we used to have, sit in a circle and argue about Israel, about the American Indians, about, that time Iranians have a revolution. But we talked about it and we listened to each other. Yeah, there's some heated conversations, but at the end, everybody hugged and went to
Yeah.
smoke pot,
Yeah.
and they forgot about it,
And
right?
that's the
So
difference. That's the
yeah, that's
difference.
a
So,
all right. Last question, Terry, and then I'm gonna
yeah.
let you go. I'm giving you your own billboard in Times Square, and you get to write whatever you want to write on for people to see every day. What do you
Wow.
say?
That's
What's it gonna
heavy.
say?
That's heavy. So listen, my I know I can't pick two, but it would certainly be, it probably would be as simple, Zev, as do what you love and success will come. I truly believe that if you do what you love, that you will, and success means different things to different people, but I mean, and the success will come. I mean, that's a big
Yeah,
one for me.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's your billboard, and I'll just add one more. Do what you love, be kind to other people,
There you
success
go.
will come, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
because without the other piece,
Yeah.
yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
All right, Terry,
Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thank
This
you.
was
Good to
fun.
see
Same here. We'll be in touch.
you. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.